I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things, a creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the Internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMar, and I'm here with my co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
And you are listening to For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about the environment and ecology, and we talk about it in terms of how it's going to affect you, your family, your health, your wealth, your happiness. And let's face it, happiness is a healthy environment. Wouldn't you say, Rebecca?
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah. So, and we're very happy to be back on the air, broadcasting live on 106.5 FM, The Ticket, because we had a little pause last week. The station, and we're working out some contract issues, and we were off last week, but we're happy to be back on this week, and we anticipate being on next week and thereafter, because I think this is an important show. I think it's for a green future. If we want a green future, we need programs like this one to bring up these issues and teach people about them and give them the information that they're not going to get from the mainstream media.
And there need to be more voices. You know, we're not getting enough voices. I'm watching daytime TV. They keep replaying the same story about some Hollywood couple that's getting divorced for 2 or 3 days now because, God forbid, we should use a slow news day to cover anything in the world in depth.
Right. So, but we can go as deep as you like on this show.
You betcha.
And it's because it's a call-in show. The number is 866-240-1065. That's 866-240-1065. And we prioritize calls and callers on this show. So if you have a question about any sort of environmental issue, just give us a call, and we will dive in as deep as necessary to give it the kind of coverage that you would like. And but today we have a pretty good show. We're going to be talking about some things. We have our letter from the future coming up, of course. And I wanted to start with a personal story and a question for you guys now. This happened to me just yesterday. I was out actually campaigning, going door to door for the Green Party's candidate for City Council, Stefania Czech. And I was there with a partner, and we were going past this house, and I look over and I see this little kid. I'm assuming it's a little kid in a beekeeper's outfit. And I was like, oh, that's cute. And then another, like, larger beekeeper person, I can't see any of them. They're covered head to toe here. And comes around the house. I'm like, oh, they must be doing something with bees. Well, that's nice. And but then my partner and I were walking past this house. We were way in the middle of the street, well away from the house itself, and this cloud of bees descends on us and starts stinging us and chases us halfway down the block.
So something had gone wrong with this man's beekeeping technique, I'm guessing. There'd been some kind of an emergency.
Yeah, he may never have heard about that whole smoke trick that makes them calm before you do stuff to them, because I know that I kept looking back as we went down the block, and I would see other people like running past this house swatting at things. And so it was not a pretty sight, but it was one of those kinds of direct interactions with insects that people have sometimes. And but it appears we're having them less and less, according to the science and the scientists. Bugs, insects, have gone down by about 50% worldwide. And I'm just wondering, I'm asking, how about you? Have you had any kind of interaction with insects? Have you noticed this decline locally? Does it seem like there's fewer insects around, fewer flies, fewer bugs, fewer spiders? What do you think? 866-240-1065. Or do you think the scientists are just way off on this one, that there's plenty of bugs? It's just that they're not looking hard enough or something. But my wife and my son went up last week. They were on this remote island camping in Lake Michigan. It's a wilderness island. There's nothing on it. But they came back and they were talking about the bugs. And actually they said there were so many mosquitoes that when they weren't talking, you could hear them in the background, like, like some dramatic music, like, some violin going. Yeah.
With very tiny strings.
Right, but millions of
high
them.
Range.
Right, so, but that's an island where there's no human interference. Nobody's out spraying the pesticides. Nobody's out doing the herbicides or cutting down the plant, the foliage that insects need. And so there's still millions of insects, and that's kind of the natural condition. I know somebody who's I was talking with their kid, and he was like, "Oh, I hate bugs. I wish there were no bugs. I would love a world with zero insects."
Except you'd be dead.
Well, yeah, I tried to explain that to him. I'm not sure I convinced him, but I'm wondering, so I'm taking a survey amongst our listeners. What have you had insect interactions? Do you agree with this idea that there's fewer insects now than there were? And does it worry you? Do you care that there's no insects? So.
You know what my mother always used to say if I was afraid of a bug? She'd say, well, that poor bug is probably thinking, eek, it's a great big ugly girl. And that people keep thinking I need to tell that to my therapist. Sorry, but I can see your point.
Yeah.
I'm not what bugs consider to be attractive, I guess.
Well, I don't know. I have no idea what the bug aesthetic is.
Probably other bugs.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose so. I suppose we'd all get painted with that.
Yeah,
that unattractive brush by the bugs. So, well, if any bugs are able to call in, let us know. But this idea that this is something to worry about, that this is something that we should be doing something about. And I know people are encouraging monarchs. I drive around and I see a lot of people are letting milkweed grow in their lawn. It's kind of interesting because they'll have this impeccable lawn, and yet all of a sudden there's these random milkweed plants popping up out of it. And I think that's having an effect locally. I've noticed a lot more monarchs this year, but then in years past.
I wish I had. I'm sort of sentimental about monarch butterflies because I grew up in 4 states because academic gypsies. Mm-hmm. Every time somebody got another degree, they got another better job, and I had to give up all my grade school friends yet again. Mm. So I ended up growing up in Michigan, New York, Ohio, and Kentucky. And, in all those places, there was not a lot of continuity there, but there was always Queen Anne's lace and chicory, which are, I guess, invasive species that aren't that invasive. So they just stick to the roadside. They don't bother other things. And then there was monarch butterflies. Everywhere there's monarch butterflies because isn't their range all the way from Michoacan to Michigan, more or less?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, from up near the Arctic Circle all the way down to Mexico.
Yeah, so they were like my little friends that always came with me everywhere.
Oh, well, that's nice, yeah. Do any of you consider insects your little friend? any sort of insect?
But not in a creepy, that one guy in Dracula in the lunatic asylum way.
Okay, all right, great. Give us a call, 866-240-1065. Okay, so bugs, that's one of our themes for today. But the other theme for today is that the world is burning. We're actually burning at both ends, so to speak. We're living on a sphere, of course, so we don't really have ends. But from the tropics to the Arctic, the Earth is on fire. And this is one that actually is being picked up by the mainstream media. Finally, they are talking about the Amazon and talking about Brazil. And I guess there's a Trump-like character down there, a prime minister named Bolsonaro, who basically declared open season on indigenous people living in Brazil and on the Brazilian environment and on the rainforest. He basically said, go ahead and kill everything, and we're not going to stop you. And so what happened is that the farmers and the ranchers down there, the ones that are burning the forest in order to plant soybeans, in order to create beef, they took the election of Bolsonaro as just a signal that, okay, we could do whatever we want. And they did the reports are that they all coordinated with each other, and they said, we're going to have a day of fire. And that day of fire was August 10th, and that is apparently when the bulk of these fires that are burning out of control down in the rainforest they just went and started them all. They just decided we're going to burn down the rainforest, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. And so I think it's important that we cover it. The Arctic or the rainforest, the reports are generate about 20% of the oxygen that we breathe, and so worldwide, globally. And so talking about how this show reflects your personal health and wealth, and, well, the amount of oxygen in the air has a direct relationship to your personal health.
So I keep hearing, they keep talking about, farmers did this, farmers, okay, which, brings up an image of, people there in their little overalls holding a pitchfork, but I get the impression it was more sort of gigantic, wealthy commercial farmers working for Burger King.
Well, the people that are on the front lines actually have some. They're fairly well organized. The individual person burning a forest might be like someone acting privately, but they're very well connected to the global agribusiness because they burn it down for soybeans, and then those soybeans go to making beef. And I'm not sure about the Burger King America beef connection anymore. I was searching for that on the internet, and it looks like Burger King may have backed off from buying Brazilian beef for their burgers.
Good for them.
But there's certainly no lack of purchasers on the global market for Brazilian beef. And they are not little guys with pitchforks. These are people that have massive amounts of machinery. They're using tractors and bulldozers, and they're using industrial. This is industry versus nature, because they're burning the natives, the indigenous people who live there, out of their territories. They're simply burning their entire territories. And I think the estimate was 10,000 of these farmers and miners descended on the Amazon and did this coordinated attack on August 10th. So when you got 10,000 guys acting in conjunction in an organized way, that's just not a few subsistence farmers trying to.
They didn't just
by.
all wake up in a Bernie mood that day.
Right, exactly. That is a planned attack on the planet, and apparently this plan was planned out by Bolsonaro. And I'm saying apparently, so Bolsonaro supporters, wherever you are, don't sue me. But that's what it's looking like. There were some leaked documents from the government that said that they want to do specific projects, and that the lands need to be cleared in those areas so they can do these specific roads and bridges and dams and things. And those happen to be the areas that got burned. And so it's like, okay.
And it's okay because only indigenous people and wildlife lives there. Did you ever notice when people want to justify doing something horrible. It's only these people with no power.
Mm-hmm.
Monkeys and indigenous people don't have any power, so somehow they don't matter. It's only.
Right.
It's all right. We're only messing with people we all kind of agree that people with no power don't really feel pain, don't really need things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's okay to murder them or take their stuff away,
But in the end, these things do actually come back and affect the people with power along with everybody else.
Fairly soon, it's looking like, actually.
Very soon, yeah. The city of Sao Paulo in Brazil, they had a blackout. It became midnight, complete darkness at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because of the smokes from the fire, which were which were like 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers away. So that pall fell over the rich and the powerful as well as the powerless and poor. And actually, this past week, I have a very personal illustration of this. One is that I'd lost a friend to cancer, apparently early this morning. Her name was Roz Smith. She also went by Roz McAllister, and she was a friend of mine, lived in Bowling Green, and she had cancer, and it looked like she was going to beat it. She actually got to the point where she was declared in remission and started coming out and doing a couple things here and there, and then it came back, and she very quickly after that passed away. And so, I'm dedicating this show to Roz. She was a great lady. But she was not one of these rich and powerful people. She lived in an inexpensive apartment down in Bowling Green, and so I'm going to miss her a lot. She was a great lady. But we also had news that one of the Koch brothers, one of the infamous Koch brothers, David Koch, also died of cancer this past week.
Finally, a little poetic justice, but not anywhere near enough.
Yeah, so
not soon enough either.
Right. Well, and this is a guy who just blatantly, like Bolsonaro, just blatantly used his wealth to control the political process in the United States. I ran for U.S. Senate a couple of years ago, 2016, and in that race I got about 90,000 votes with a budget of about $10,000, which is pretty good for a Green. But the Republican incumbent that was supported by Koch, Koch on his behalf, in order to push Portman, Koch spent $70 million here in the state of Ohio. And you just can't have democracy with that level of inequality. I mean, I did great. I spent like 80 cents a vote, but I only had $10,000. Portman, between his money and the Koch money, he spent something on the order of $20 per vote, which is just insane. And so Koch was an enemy of democracy. He was an enemy of the environment. His coal plants have been cited for millions and millions of dollars of fines because they just continuously ignore environmental laws. And as a libertarian, he's one of the founders and funders of the Libertarian Party. He felt that he was fundamentally opposed to the idea of environmental legislation. He felt that there should not be any environmental laws, and therefore I can break them with impunity because they just shouldn't be there. And so, in the end, as you say, a little poetic justice, he died of cancer, a disease which is a disease of pollution. I mean, we're putting these chemicals in the air, all of these chemicals, and we're putting radioactive isotopes in the air and into the environment all the time. We know these things cause cancer, and yet we're doing it anyway because, people like David Koch have an outsized influence on our legislation, on our government, because of their money. And so now that comes around, and it ends up, as you say, it ends up affecting everyone, rich and poor, powerful, people without power. Although nobody really has no power unless you believe what you've been told, unless you accept the lie oh, you have no political power, unless you accept that, you've still got political power. I don't care what anybody says. Everybody has
Still got a mouth and 2 hands. You got something.
Exactly, and a brain.
Yeah.
And so, none of us have zero political power except those of us who've given up our political power. So anyway, does this concern you? Are all these reports of the Amazon burning down, does this worry you, or are you just that's the Amazon, we're in Ohio, it doesn't matter, yeah, I could listen to For a Green Future, the best show in Ohio, but it does get better every time you call it, 866-240-1065. So give us a call. Are these stories worrying you at all? So
they're worrying me because, the cancer thing. Yeah, I know an awful lot of people who have had cancer or died of cancer in Toledo, as it happens. There's my stepmom. She has stage 4 ovarian cancer. She had 3 siblings in her family. One is already dead of breast cancer. The other one hasn't got anything yet, but then he really never goes into for medical appointments because, dude. But clinically depressed dude. But so that's 2 out of 3, and they grew up on the east side in the shadow of the refinery. Hard to believe that's a complete coincidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That and the Toledo poetry community has been hit pretty hard by liver cancer. We had 2 people die of liver cancer.
Oh, wow.
I didn't think, and one of my taxi customers when I drove cab, poor old Deb,
Mm-hmm.
the liver cancer got her too. It seems funny to me that I know that many people who have had that specific disease. It just does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, cancer rates do go up near refineries.
Mm-hmm.
We can say that with some certainty, and because there's a place down in called Cancer Alley along the Mississippi where it's just lined with refineries, and pretty much everybody is going to get cancer in that area, and that's what they wanted. They want to do more of this. We had a guest on, Leatra Harper was talking about they want to put a new refinery on the Ohio River, down in the southeastern part of Ohio, and this would put tons more pollutants into the Ohio River, which is already the most polluted river in the country. So we have that distinction here in Ohio. We have the most polluted river because we're not taking care of the environment the way we should. People haven't been making environment and ecology one of their main issues when they're voting. Now, there is movement to change that, apparently. There's all kinds of organizations that have been popping up to deal with the crisis of the global warming. And by the way, here on For a Green Future, we call it global warming. We don't climate change. That's just too wimpy. I'm sorry. Yes, it might be more accurate in that some areas of the globe are actually getting cooler because of this climate change, but the bulk of the globe, the whole planet, if you take it as a whole, is warming, and so we use global warming. Gosh darn it! It
does sound a little bit like global climate change. Well, we'll just swap out the sunscreen for parka, and we'll do skiing instead of sunbathing.
Right, climate or change could be good or bad. It's just change. But
kind of climate destruction is more like it.
But a lot of these organizations have been popping up to fight global warming, and a lot of them have been focusing their efforts on political parties, on influencing the political process. And there's an organization of students, mostly students, called the Sunrise Movement, mostly young people, and they've been hammering the Democratic Party on global warming because they believe that the Democrats will come and help them. And so there was a big decision this past week. The Democratic National Committee, I'm not sure exactly which bureaucratic arm of the Democratic Party decided this, but it decided that there would not be any climate-focused debate amongst the presidential candidates for the Democrats. And this meeting was attended by these Sunrise Movement people who are, they've just blossomed all over the country. There's hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people in this Sunrise Movement. And so what they did is they sang an old Pete Seeger labor song called "Which Side Are You On, Boys?" And I'm actually going to do that because I have a Pete Seeger impersonation, and
Yay.
I never actually get to use it, but this is my radio show, so
And old Pete was a class act.
yeah, oh yeah, he was wonderful. He was an environmentalist through and through, as well as somebody who supported workers' rights and just loved singing.
Because that's that's the false juxtaposition that's always put before us. Environmentalists don't care about people, don't care about jobs. Well, yes, we do.
Yeah, we do. And that's the ultimate irony is there's more jobs protecting the environment. There's more jobs doing this whole economy thing in a balanced way than there are by doing it in a way that wrecks the environment.
But there's less money for some shareholders.
Right. I mean, we saw this demonstrated on House Bill 6. The energy and efficiency standards employ about 100,000 people, putting in insulation, putting in energy efficient machines, and so they cut that funding, and then they're giving the funding to the nuclear plants, which employ about 4,000 people, if you accept the most wildly optimistic, counting. I think the number is actually closer to like 800, but they're claiming 4,000. But in any event, even if you accept their number, they're trading 100,000 jobs to save 4,000 jobs. So they're doing the environmentally incorrect thing, and yet they're creating fewer jobs. They're hurting the economy by doing it that way. So anyway.
Not to mention what's happening to the Port Clinton businesses when the lake is rising and flooding their main street and things, and that's costing some people some money, but somehow that never gets factored into the whole economic impact thing.
Sure. Well, plus the algal blooms, which are exacerbated by the nuclear plants putting their hot water into the lake.
But that just affects, small local businesses, which there are a lot of, so they make a big impact collectively, but they're not already wealthy, so.
All right. But anyway, so on to the promised song. Here we go. So this is what the people from the Sunrise Movement saying before they got up and walked out of the Democrat convention process. Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on? They say in Harlan County there are no neutrals there. Either you're a Union man or a thug for J.H. Blair. Oh, which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on? There you go. Just one verse.
Where's Harlan County? Is that Kentucky?
I think it might even be. Yeah, well, Pennsylvania. It was in the coal. This was a Union song from the coal
no doubt.
Mines.
Somewhere in the hills. I'm
right
guessing,
down it. It might
where the coal grows.
It might even be. No, I'm not going to say Ohio. No, it's not Ohio. So it must be Kentucky or Pennsylvania. One of those. It's in that region, though. Oh wait, I have an answer.
Ooh.
It's in Kentucky.
I thought so.
Yes, we have our 21st century member of the team there.
Right.
Looked something up on the internet. Thank you,
guy
Russell.
who knows how things work.
Yeah. Okay, so that's talking about we've been talking about the equatorial regions. We've been talking about Brazil and so forth. But now it's time to talk about local in terms of our terrific sponsors. And we have two sponsors for this hour. The first sponsor is the Wood County Park District. And the Wood County Park District is an organization which is dedicated to protecting the environment, to teaching people to love and respect nature, and they provide outdoor adventures. And Wood County Park District has over 20 parks that are open every day of the year from 8 a.m. to 1 hour past sunset, Monday through Sunday. So check out the Wood County Park District. Their website is wcparks.org. That's wcparks.org. And they provide a variety of activities. They have a monthly book club where they read a book about nature, and you can join that book club. They have activities at all their various parks. They sponsor hikes. They have restoration projects where you can go and you can volunteer to remove invasive species. You can also help clear trails. You can help plant native plants. They have a native nursery where they're growing native plants that they use to restore the nature in the Wood County Park districts. And they're just a jewel here in Northwest Ohio. And for those of you listening elsewhere on the internet, Wood County is just south of Lucas County, which is just south of Toledo, Ohio. So check out the Wood County Park districts at wcparks.org. Then our other sponsor is DeMar Consulting. DeMar Consulting is a computer consulting business. They will come to your home and they will help you. Perhaps your computer's running a little slow and you don't know why. They'll come out and check it out. They'll diagnose it, and most likely they'll be able to help you. In the event they can't help you, sometimes computers just die. They're like everything else. They can steer you towards buying a computer that will meet your needs. They're not going to try to upsell you a computer that has tons of bells and whistles if all you ever do is check your Facebook posts and check your emails. They can help you choose a new computer to buy. And everyone at DeMar Consulting has a degree in computer science, so you know that they know what they're talking about. And there's two ways to reach DeMar Consulting. One is you can phone or text at 419-973-3000. That's 419-973-3000. Or you can go online at demarconsulting.com. And DeMar is spelled D-E-M-A-R-E, then the word consulting.com. So DeMar Consulting for all your home computer needs. So, all right, there we've gotten past the bottom of the hour, as they say in radio, and we are still hoping for some calls at 866-240-1065. The questions are insects. Do you have a personal insect story of some sort? Nothing too creepy, but but we're interested because the scientists are telling us that insect populations have fallen by half. Have you noticed this in your personal life? Have you noticed a change in the number or your relationship with insects? And we were also talked about the Amazon rainforest burning down in Brazil. But I wanted to cover a related story that's not getting nearly as much press because there aren't nearly as many cute little animals living up in the Arctic regions. And yet the Arctic regions are also on fire.
Well, there's polar bears. Polar bears are eating seals. They're cute.
Well, they are cute. That's true. But they live on the coast. And these fires are happening inland in what's called the Taiga.
That's good, but there are wolves. There are wolves up there, and they eat, like, rodents and stuff, and there's going to be less rodents. And I think wolves are cute. I don't care.
Well, I agree. Wolves are cute. No doubt about that. But if you you've got wolves. They're cute. But if you add up the cuteness of all the rainforest animals, you've got...
There's just a lot of them.
Yeah, you've got monkeys. That's a whole level of cute beyond wolves. Wolves can't do the cute little things with their hands that monkeys could do.
Okay, the rainforest. Okay, I remember something about this from college. Isn't it very hard to build that up after you have burned it down? Because there's something about all the nutrients are not in the soil, they're up in the trees. They're up, like, nourishing all that life. And the reason those indigenous people were living back there in the rainforest to begin with is because everybody else got the better farming areas. So what happens when you strip the rainforest and burn down all the trees and grow some giant monoculture thing for money is that it's really, really rich and fertile for, 2-3 years, something like that, 5
right.
if you're very lucky.
Yes.
And then the nutrients are all gone, and it's really going to be hard to put them back and regrow the trees. So everybody's like, oh, just plant more trees, rebuild it by planting more trees, but it's not going to be there.
No, yeah, it basically becomes like a cement. The reason is, of course, the rainforest is constantly being rained on. So there's constant rainfall, and that washes the nutrients out of the soil. So the soil itself is very thin and actually not terribly fertile. And as you say, all the nutrients are bound up in the life on the soil, the trees and the vines and the plants and the animals. That's where all the nutrition is. And yes, once you burn it, you're starting down a slippery slope. You're heading towards essentially like a cement desert, and so this is not a sustainable practice and has to be stopped. But to draw us back to the Arctic, to the northern part, much of the Arctic is this taiga, which I saw some of this when I was in Alaska in Denali National Forest or Denali State Park. It's stunted evergreen trees, that are basically evolved to handle tons and tons and tons of snow, and then they're sitting on this soil which is on permafrost, which has organic matter bound up in it. 10,000 years worth of plants that have grown up and died and just stayed there in the soil because they didn't get completely broken down because of it's so cold and the permafrost, that layer of ice that they're stuck in and under. And so there's billions of tons of carbon bound up in the taiga, in the northern part of the planet, even more than in the rainforest. I mean, there's billions of tons of carbon in the rainforest, so don't get me wrong, we can't burn them down. But the burning that's happening right now in the Arctic may actually be more serious in terms of the global carbon and the planet dying. And there's fires burning right now in Russia, in Greenland, in Alaska, in British Columbia. And these fires are being accompanied by record temperatures. There was a fire that was just back in July. Anchorage, Alaska, where my son happens to live, hit 90 degrees. It was a record. It was a superheat record that beat the old record by 4 or 5 degrees. It wasn't one of these, we hit 90. We beat the old record by 0.4 degrees. No, they just blew it away. And people up there aren't used to hot weather. They don't have air conditioners. All they had were box fans. And
plus, if I were one of those 19th century explorers who lost my life up there because weather plus lead poisoning plus didn't think I could talk to the Inuit peoples, I'd be mad. It's like, where was the 90-degree weather when I was freezing to death? Although they should basic sympathetic magic, never get on a ship that's called the Terror. Bad idea.
Okay. Yes. Good. So, well, I don't know.
I feel like they should have known that was a bad omen. I really do.
Well, they blazed the trail, but unfortunately, the whole Arctic is blazing now.
Yeah.
And when the Arctic burns, it's not just that top layer that you see. It's not just the stunted evergreen trees and that top layer of grass and stuff. The fires then get down into the peat and to the...
Ooh, and peat is like very closely related to... People burn that in Ireland and Europe for centuries.
Like coal,
for
right?
cook fires and house fires, and it's very close to coal. It's kind of pre-coal.
Right. Peat kind of leads to coal after millions of years of pressure and heat and stuff. And so, so when the Arctic is burning, it's putting even more carbon up into the air. And to give you an idea of the scale, I told you about how it's happening all over the Arctic, all around the globe. But it's happening, one of the places it's happening in Siberia is Siberia. And in Siberia, they have already this year lost 13.5 million acres to fire, which is unheard of. And 13.5 million acres, that's basically West Virginia.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not one of the little states like Rhode Island or something like that. No, it's one of the good-sized states. It's
not Texas, but still.
Yeah, no, we're not near Texas or Alaska, but still, we don't need to go that far. That's the whole point, is that we've got to stop putting carbon in the air so we don't get to the point where we're like say, okay, which state burned this week? Yeah.
Ixnay on the Arbin K.
Right. And it's actually getting harder and harder to talk about this because they keep putting restrictions and on people talking about climate change, because politically there's certain parties and certain politicians that are being hurt by the fact that they're denying climate change, And so these, and I'm going to say guys because it's mostly guys, frankly, these guys are trying to suppress even the discussion. And we see that very directly with Trump and the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency. He has scrubbed mention of global warming from the EPA website, except, as we discussed a few weeks ago, except he does allow discussion of adaptation to climate change because there's money to be made there in building, dikes and things. But he won't actually admit to climate change. But there's an example happening of this that I wanted to tell you about in Canada, of all places, which normally we think of Canada as having a fairly strong democracy. They've got, I think it's up to 3 Green prime minister or 3
Cool.
ministers in Parliament right now, and Canadians are paying a lot of attention to climate change and climate issues, but that hurts the conservative political parties in Canada who are busy denying climate change. And so they have made a case. They're trying to ban any kind of advertising that mentions climate change or global warming from Canadian airwaves because they say that's a political ad. Because our political position is there's no such thing as climate change. So if you run an ad that says there is climate change, that's political, and you're attacking us directly. And you're
Basic
hurting.
science is political.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. Is that science is political? They're saying reality is political.
Yeah.
And therefore they have to ban discussion of reality in order so that it doesn't hurt them politically. And this is just, if this were just an isolated crazy thing just way off on the fringe, I wouldn't actually be reporting it because I wouldn't want to encourage it. I don't want to
Right.
give the certain parties in Ohio any ideas. But this is happening. This is the kind of thing that's happening all over the world and in different places. And freedom of speech is essential to democracy. There's just no two ways about it. You have to be able to know the facts. You have to be able to discuss and debate them if you, as a citizen, are going to make the right decision and vote the right way, the way that's going to protect our society and allow us to have that green future, which I often say we have to have a green future because without that we don't have any future. So, but speaking of the future, now is time to hear from our letter from the future. As you may recall, my great-great-granddaughter, Marie I, is sending us letters from the year 2299. And here's this week's letter. Dear great-great-grandpa, just a quick note. Today I've been very busy catching up with things after I got back to work here on the Kola Peninsula. I know that you are living in the time of fires when Siberia burned. We can still see the evidence of those fires here in the future, but most of the burn scars are finally grown over and the tiaga trees are back. My assistants and I have been busily studying the bacteria that live deep below the surface of the earth. I can't tell you most of what we've discovered because people in your time don't yet know how important these deep bacteria are to continued life on the surface. But I can say that life everywhere is important, from the poles to the equator to the bottom of the ocean to deep in the earth. Thanks to you and your listeners for protecting it. Love, Marie I.
It's a shame she never has any investing advice or sports betting, anything like that. Have you asked her about that?
No, I haven't.
I guess maybe things are good enough there that, you don't really have to worry about that stuff. You can just, make an honest living and things are cool.
That's the impression I get
Yeah.
from her letters, that we're not, you're not dependent on making good bets in the real estate market or something
Right.
like that. That if you work hard and, everybody.
Do something that's constructive for yourself and other people, then that's a way to make a living.
Yeah. One thing I do know from her letters from the future is that the public transportation system in the future is way and above better than today. And I think, Rebecca, we wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of public transportation. And did you have something you wanted to say about that?
I do actually, unless that's a caller.
We may have a caller,
Might
but
have a caller.
I don't know. But we have to plug on because.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, so 2 interesting facts that I sort of separately ran across this week. In some California city, it's one of the biggies, I forget which one, but ride-sharing services, which we know some of the names of, have more than doubled traffic in cities in California. And
Okay. Wait. Okay. Well, we actually do have a caller.
Okay,
yes.
go caller.
All right, caller. Yes, Cindy, go ahead.
Hi, guys. Good to hear you again this weekend. I missed last.
Howdy.
We missed you too.
I had a quick question. I've been reading about the climate strike internationally. It's supposed to be September 20th. Do we have anything locally planned for climate strike yet? Some kind of action or event? I've been looking and I haven't seen anything yet.
Not that I know of, but yeah, as you say, there is a nationwide call. Well, it's a global call for people to literally strike, as it don't go to work, don't go to school, on September 20th. And I think I'm not sure if we find things that are happening locally, if there's anything specific planned, we'll let you know. But I actually just heard about this climate strike this past week. I think Wednesday is when the first day I learned about it. So details are still out on that, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on and to mark on your calendars. Although I don't.
I had marked mine a while back.
Did you?
I had put that on there. I had marked it, but I haven't found anything locally. It's something in Ann Arbor, I think, the closest to Toledo area I've seen.
Well, I think that it's important that things like this have a local aspect because you don't want to you don't want to get in your car and drive to Ann Arbor and burn gas to go to a climate strike.
Yes.
Or when you can have something right where you are locally that you could walk to or maybe even take public transportation to. But thanks very much, Cindy, for alerting us to this upcoming global event. So thank you. Thanks for the call.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right.
Have a good week.
Okay. So, Becca, public transportation. So if something does get organized in Toledo, people may be able to take TARTA there, right? But we had some things we wanted to talk about in terms of public transportation.
Right. So I'm often hearing ride-sharing services, especially with driverless cars, proposed as a solution to public transit problems, especially by millennials. Not to pick on them, but they love that stuff. And, it's kind of fun in some ways.
Which is good.
Yeah, that's good. But, yeah, apparently it just adds up to a lot more cars on the road. So actually not good for the environment.
Oh, too bad.
And also, apparently... Separate tidbit, good public transit turns out to be the biggest factor in whether people can get out of poverty or not. So never mind if you do drugs, if your parents do drugs, if your school system is good, none of that stuff matters. Just live near a good bus route, kids. That's important.
Interesting.
Which is a little ironic because, the conservatives are always telling us, oh, you welfare scum need to get your parasites, you need to get out of poverty. But it's dashed difficult to do that in Toledo. Really, the public transit is so bad that if you can make it work at all, it's like having a second job. I've known people with full-time jobs who would come over and be like, I'm desperate, Becca, can I have a can of beans? Begging for me, the welfare trash, because they didn't have time and energy to go to the store after work.
So like one of their 2 jobs is just going to support their car.
Yeah, basically. Well, no, if you're trying to actually do it on the bus. And, there's this mythology, especially in Toledo, that public transportation only matters for the elderly and disabled. Not true. In fact, hundreds of people depend on public transit to get to and from their jobs. So every time you cut public transit, people become homeless and die outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we saw that aspect of libertarian philosophy applied in Perrysburg that went a year without public transit because they put a libertarian on the city council, and one of the first things he did was say, public transit, we don't need that.
Interesting tidbit about that also. That's actually being touted as a model of efficiency because they have this separate service of their own, which is allegedly more efficient, except for if you actually look at their budget, apparently, go over it, look at the numbers, they're paying way more for their separate system than they ever put into TARTA.
Mm-hmm.
But,
right, and that's how a lot of these libertarian ideas end up once you actually apply them, it's more expensive. You get less benefit. More people suffer, and so our listeners in Columbus, they have the benefit of a very good public transit system down there. And I noticed that Columbus is really, really thriving.
Yeah, I feel like that's not a coincidence.
Yeah, in a way that Toledo just isn't.
Right.
I also...
Because the message to poor people is here, once you get below a certain level, just stay down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right, so public transportation, extremely important for a green future. And
basically.
And sorry to all you millennials out there, just the fact that a robot is driving the car instead of you doesn't make the environmental impact of the car any less.
No, it does not. And I was hearing about bicycles. Bicycles are great. Yeah, people should ride bicycles. But the thing is, low-income people are already utilizing bicycles. Walk over the Cherry Street Bridge sometimes, the Martin Luther King Bridge. Every single time you go over that, there will be a guy on a bicycle coming to or from his factory job. But It doesn't give us the penetration and the access to the job market that we need because winter and urban sprawl.
Right.
And we don't have the kind of jobs that we're going to be able to, just make it work till you can save up for a car. We don't have credit cards. If you're disabled and you get your monthly check anymore on they just load a card for you, that card does not work on the ride sharing services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there's one direct thing that could happen. So TARTA here in Toledo just opened up a new central location, right?
It's not central. It's kind of like out on the edge of downtown where you have to walk for a long time to get to any of the businesses, which is on purpose because it's NIMBY. They don't want the bus riders scaring off the tourists, basically.
Well, I love the bus, and I take it whenever I can. When I was running for city council in Bowling Green, one of the things I said is we need to have bus service between Wood County and Lucas County.
That would be very cool.
Right, because there are jobs down in Lucas County that down in Wood County that people in Lucas County could benefit from.
Maybe vice versa.
Yeah, and vice versa. So, transportation, good public transportation. And the thing about public transportation is it's more efficient. You spend, like, if you go by rail, you use less energy. And I've been reading lately about Toledo's Traction company, that the trolley system that predated TARTA, that kind of morphed into TARTA, it turned into buses and TARTA, but in the beginning it was an electric trolley system, and it covered the whole area, and it was inexpensive, and it was just fantastic, and you could literally catch a trolley from Toledo to Cincinnati.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a bridge over the Maumee down by Watertown that was part of that system. It's an abandoned bridge. It's very picturesque and crumbling now. But you can still find the tracks sometimes. You can still find the buildings that had been the stations that are just abandoned. And, this was back in the early 1900s. And so back in the early 1900s, they had an efficient mass transit system that was inexpensive and could serve everybody. My wife's father is 95 right now, and he talks about taking the trolley downtown.
Also, you could put your corporate headquarters downtown without having to take up one of our parks for a parking garage, say, for example, because people could take the trolley.
That's true, and they did.
And there was lots of corporate headquarters downtown, lots of stores you could shop in. It was pretty good then.
I think that we're kind of influenced by the Detroit culture, by the car culture.
Yeah.
I think that around here there has been sort of a stigma.
Well, according to the Toledo public radio programs on Toledo history, actually, one of the car companies bought that electrical trolley system and shut it down. At the height of its success, it was going gangbusters. Public transportation in Toledo did not die a natural death. It was murdered.
Yeah. And that story actually was repeated all over the country. It was one of these coordinated things that car companies didn't want to compete against cheap, efficient public transportation, so they would buy it and then shut it down.
And you hear, that horrible man out in Sylvania, Haddad, Kevin Haddad, was it? I don't want to. There's another Haddad with a K name, but yeah, he was on the Sylvania, and he's the one who's always complaining to the media about the empty buses. When he sees buses come out at the end of the bus route to his salon, they're empty. Although I've been on the bus route he's talking about, and in the middle, it's so packed that they don't let people on, and you have to stand up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all this. There's been these I-team investigative reports about how terrible it is that there's a bus with only 2 people on it going to some suburb. I don't see those reporters, and I don't see that outrage when disabled people are having to stand.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the buses are so crowded, but we can't put another one on. You know what? If you're all about efficiency, then how about advocating for extra buses and the busier routes?
That's a great suggestion,
Yeah.
Rebecca. So this is something that's important to remember in the coming months, because apparently there's going to be another coordinated attack on what's left of our public transportation system. It's shaping up like to become another political battle, and as you just pointed out, that battle is going to be full of misinformation and misleading information. Yes, occasionally buses are empty, but we should be riding buses more, not less. And just the fact that there's an occasional empty bus doesn't mean public transportation is bad. It's fantastic.
It means they're being very selective in what they portray, is what it means.
Exactly. And all right, well, I'm hearing our theme music, our terrific theme music, which means we're coming to the end of the show. Rebecca, thank you very much for co-hosting.
Thank you.
All right, and thanks to all of you for listening. And we just really appreciate the fact that so many people are paying attention to the environment, and we're glad to be here every week. And we're hoping to be back next week. So this is Joe DeMar signing off.
But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more 3-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't